When you walk into a facility, all that you see is a sea of black and brown bodies.
Racial injustice is evident, within these youth prisons.
It's mostly African-American males. It's obvious.
It's hard to try to argue that it's not a racial justice issue.
You see these two white staff all of a sudden just rushing into the room. All of us just standing there and watching, my friend who was African-American, being beat down by the staff. I'm like, why'd you go and do that? And he's like, what do you care? He's like, at the end of the day, kid, you're only here to pay my paycheck. In that moment, I realized I was just seen as a dollar sign to this man.
I would define structural racism as a hierarchical inequity that is characterized by white supremacy.
If you have any questions about what structural racism looks like, I encourage you to walk into a juvenile prison in America, talk to the black kids who are in those facilities and ask them what their experience has been in the juvenile justice system.
When the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, it actually kept an exception for people who were convicted of a criminal offense. And so the criminal justice system and the juvenile justice system became the new vehicle for controlling the lives of people of color.
After the Civil War ended and we saw this influx of African Americans exercising what they deemed as their freedom, immediately we saw institutions go up, these youth prisons be built to house young black African American males.
Post-Emancipation Proclamation, unfortunately as a whole, as a country, we thought it was our opportunity to do away with racism. We thought that we'd gotten past that particular issue. And through sharecropping, through Jim Crow, through segregation, the drug epidemic, we find that, society, especially here in the U.S., we just reinvent that issue.
It's almost like it was meant to be. Like at no point in our history would black males be completely free.
So Virginia is indeed the heart of the Confederacy. You can walk down on the James River and stand in the very place where black lives were bought and sold. You can walk the slave trails.
Some states highlight the fact that their institutions have been around for hundreds of years. And that's certainly like a slap in the face for our brown and black allies. And I think it's disgusting that a state would highlight the fact that their institution has been around so long in the heels of the end of slavery.
The Beaumont facility was built in 1890. And when they began incarcerating young people there, those young people had to work the land, much like slaves.
New Jersey happened to be the last northern state to abolish slavery. The New Jersey Training School for Boys was opened in 1867. That's 2 years after emancipation, after slaves were free. And they put a process in place called gradual emancipation, which meant that children who were born by slave mothers had to work as indentured slaves until they were young adults.
In Kansas, we're also the state of Brown v. Board of Education. To be able to go just a few miles from the Brown v. Board of Education school building to the Kansas Juvenile Correctional Complex, our one remaining youth prison, and walking in and seeing the racial disparities in that facility. Again, it's just difficult to walk away from that and not feel like we have a special responsibility to fix this and fix this quickly.
Our youth prisons were created at a time when human bondage was legal, a time when whites were willing to see blacks as less than human. Young people will come into these facilities in leg irons and shackles. There's been incidents of correctional officers actually hog tying. Some facilities use something called a restraint chair. Everything that they do, they're being watched and they're being controlled, and they're being deprived of their own agency and their own worth.
When you look at some of the communities that are the highest committing to the juvenile justice system. They're impoverished communities. They are communities that are struggling economically. The school systems are failing, and there is a lack of hope and opportunity in those communities. And it is just a reflection of the way blacks were treated when they were first brought to this country on slave ships.
And so we have a system right now, one system of justice for white youth and for upper middle class youth, and then one system of justice for poor youth and youth of color.
The kids know, they are aware that the color of their skin affects how they're going to be treated. I don't see people who look like me behind those bars. I don't know how you can say it isn't a racial justice issue.
I feel like the movement is ripe. The time is now for this message to get out that this is no longer just a juvenile justice issue, but a racial justice issue.
I see a sea of diverse faces who've come to a place because you, like me, know that change, when it happens, it always happens from the ground up in our communities.
My hope is that we can fight for a world where no young person is locked up, where young people have the opportunity to be their full self, where young people have the opportunity to live their destiny and to carry out their dreams. That's my hope.